democracy takes many forms of expression, not only one. I believe democracy is a government in which all the people participate. A country that was opposed to our liberation, a country that supported colonial regimes, the apartheid regime in South Africa, the white racist minority regime in Zimbabwe, now Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe, the Portuguese colonial governments in Mozambique, in Angola, in Guinea-Bissau, and Cape Verde. Today is coming to Africa to teach us about democracy. A country that has toppled so many governments in Africa, that has led so many coups in Africa and other parts of the world, a country that has killed so many of our leaders in Africa and other parts of the world, the killers of Patrice Lumumba, those who toppled Kwame Nkrumah, a country that is dominated by another country cannot be democratic. A country that lacks sovereignty cannot be democratic. A people that cannot decide for themselves cannot be democratic. This is a country, this is a people that have developed themselves, that has developed itself without colonizing any country in the world, without plundering any country in the world, without subjugating any people in the world. This is a country that is developing with maximum respect for others, for their history, for their cultures. We were only taught one form of civilization, one form of modernization. That was the Western way. Modernness was a measure of how civilized, how modern you are. We reject that. We reject it because it's not correct. We reject it because it's undemocratic. We reject it because it's uncivilized to think of the world and of other people in that way. Today, they cannot accept the fact that China has caught up with them. China is about to surpass them in many areas of human endeavor. The imperialist arrogance is inhibiting them from accepting that reality.
Move forward. But whatever interpretations and meanings people are using as far as democracy is concerned and generating all this lively debate, I believe that most people still agree that democracy is still the best form of government, or as others may have put it, the least worst form of government, and desirable. Let me offer my view. I think democracy is based on the belief that all of us, each individual, has basic rights and dignity, so that we should be able to determine the future of ourselves and our society or country. Democracy needs to be supported by a series of institutions, as well as the appropriate political culture. We said that very, very few countries, if any, can call themselves truly democratic. Even in the West, where many countries have boasted that they have had long established democracies, they're also struggling with a number of challenges. In many countries, the issue of money politics and corruption has eroded faith in government and democracy, where the rich and wealthy can wield influence over policies, often at times at the expense of the majority of people.
Complex needs of a world of 8 billion people. There is no magic formula, there is no single set of institutions, there is no single model of good governance that one can apply to each place, because every country has its political culture, its specific orientations and needs, its local and historical circumstances that will shape the political institutions. But I do think it is fair to say that political institutions should meet certain basic tasks and certain basic responsibilities, and I would mention 6 very briefly. First, government should be based on a consistent orientation to the common good. Government should honor procedural justice. The governments should have the capacity to achieve not only procedural justice, but substantive justice. And in part that means achieving the economic conditions for people to meet their needs across societies. In my view, is fostering the virtues of civic participation and the individual virtues of the population about others should be fostered communally, and government by example, by good public education, by carrying out policies of procedural and substantive justice can help. Point that I would emphasize, especially in our diverse societies, is that good governments should respect and treat minorities within society with decency, with respect, with procedural justice, with law abidingness. Governments to treat other nations with respect, with peace, with a readiness for dialogue, and with a readiness for global cooperation. We are especially right now at a time of tremendous geopolitical stress. Focus on the common interest, the common good, and in a way which promotes virtue and which promotes human dignity and promotes cooperation among nations, is that we should be drawing on our ancient wisdom to help us to achieve this kind of virtuous politics. Tradition. The first, and I think the greatest book of political science ever written in the West was by Aristotle, The Politics. The Asian tradition, Confucius taught about proper behavior of individuals, as Aristotle did, virtuous behavior, and also the virtuous behavior of states. So a similar kind of tradition. Find our grounding and achieve mutual understanding and mutual respect.
And regulations. But what is the achievement of that democracy? We have a saying, I'm sure you have it too. The proof of the pudding is in the eating. What are we eating in our Western democracy? We are going backwards, while China is going forwards, raising people out of poverty. Our system is putting people into poverty. Britain is shivering with cold, with an increase in energy bills. In Western democracies, we have 2 cheeks of the same backside. In China, you cannot change the party, but you can change the policies. In Western democracies, you can change the party, but you cannot change the policies. What we have seen in China over these 25 years, particularly over the last decade, is a lesson to other so-called democracies. Made this point so powerfully. Those who have been identified with the gravest injustices lecture the rest of us on justice. They tell us about a rules-based order, which they invented, which means their rules, which they order us to obey. That period is coming so quickly to an end. There are decades when nothing happens, but there are weeks when decades happen. We have just witnessed one of those weeks.
I hope every country can find a form of democracy which fits its own civilization, culture, and the national condition. That's the base for future success. Thank you.
Our news, our world, our today.